We're talking about Excel Database Formulae, and in this video we're going to move on to talk about the SUMIFS formula and the AVERAGEIFS formula. Two more cool, really useful formulae that are going to save you loads of time when you're working with databases. Let's get straight into the spreadsheet, and we're now on questions 7 and 8. Key questions 7 and 8. So question 7, what is the total number of children for females in each region? And question 8, what is the average number of children of people over 30 in each region? So what's interesting about these questions? Well, each question is requiring multiple criteria. So we've got to tell Excel only count these rows according to two different things. So a row that contains this information and that information. So we've got multiple criteria, quite a sophisticated query. So we're going to need a sophisticated formula to get it done. Similar to what we did in the previous video, the COUNTIFS formula. There we were able to identify multiple criteria, get it working in order to count the number of rows that conform to a certain set of criteria. So in that sense, a continuation from the last video, but we're going to get into two different formulae, SUMIFS and AVERAGEIFS. So question 7, again, I'm going to copy paste the question onto the analysis sheet. You'll notice for question 6, I've done a little bit of extra work just to work out the percentages, because the question was, what is the gender balance? So you can see the percentages there. It's a bit out of scope for this video series, working out the percentages, but it's in the download file, the completed download file for you to have a look at. So I'm just going to paste in question 7. And here the technique we're talking about is SUMIF. So what is the total number of children for females in each region? Well, again, we're talking about different regions. So it's a good idea to set up a similar table. So this seems to be a good start. And then let's get into the formula. So equals SUMIFS, open bracket. Once again, we've got our prompts here. So Excel is trying to help us. Excel is saying, this is the information I need to get the formula working. Now, what is it worth noting at this point? Well, firstly, the sum range is at the beginning, rather than at the end, is at the beginning of the SUMIFS formula. Now, this is different to what we've looked at previously, the SUMIF singular, the SUMIF formula. We can see when we're using SUMIF, the sum range comes at the ends. It's the third criteria. With SUMIFS, however, the first thing we need is going to be this sum range. So that's the first thing to note. It's not a natural continuation of the SUMIF formula because we need to change the order of the components. But let's just remind ourselves, what is this sum range? Well, the formula is SUMIF, so we're going to perform an operation on a range of cells. So this sum range, Excel is asking where in the spreadsheets are the cells that you want to do something to. In this case, we want to sum them up. If we were using the AVERAGEIF formula, we would want to find the average of these cells. So we're performing an operation on these cells. So the sum range in this case, going back to the question, what's the total number of children for females in each region? So clearly the range we're going to perform the operation on is the column that contains data for the number of children. So I'm going to go to the database, and number of children column is here in column K. Control and up cursor to get to the top of the database. Control shift and down takes me to the bottom of the database. So this is our starting point. We've got our sum range. I've just put a comma into the formula. Excel is now asking for the next part of the formula. And again, it's working in pairs of components. It's going to ask for a criteria range. So specify a range. Then it's going to ask for a criteria. The criteria is the piece of information that we're using to include or exclude rows of information. In this case, going back to our question, in this case, we're talking about females. So F is going to be a criteria. And then the region north, east, west, south is going to be a criteria too. So we're going to deal with two criteria there. So we're going to need 4 more components. Each criteria requires 2 components a criteria range and the criteria itself. So let's deal with the gender first, female. So I'm going to go back to the data sheet, to the gender column, which is column F here. Control Shift down, make sure I've got the whole column selected. Now a good idea at this point is to make sure the absolute references are in. I'm going to do that for the sum range as well, forgot to do that. Make sure these references are absolute. Another point here, make sure these the row references are lining up. So we've got row 6 to row 255, row 6 to rows 255. These have to be absolutely precise. If I had row 5 rather than row 6, if I had row 5 to row 255, that would confuse Excel. The two ranges don't match up, it wouldn't work. These have to be 100% precise. So I've got criteria range 1, got the first criteria range in there. This is about females. So I'm going to just put an F in the formula here. Then we're moving on to the second set of components, criteria range 2, criteria 2. So what's our other criteria is the region. So back to the database. So where in the database is the region? Okay, we're in column G. Control Shift down to the bottom. And then just to get us going, I'm going to type in north manually. Later in the video, we're going to put a reference there to a cell just to get us started. It's a simplification. It's an easier way to get us started. Good way to get the formula working. We can then improve it, get it doing exactly what we want. So I'm just going to hit enter there. Okay, so it's returned a value of 12. So what does that mean in English? Well, it's saying for females in the north region, the total number of children is 12. So let's go and check that. The data is already sorted in terms of north, south, east, west. I'm going to need a 2-level sort now. A 2-level sort because I want to sort it in terms of region and then in terms of gender. So I've selected all the data. Alt-ASS will allow us to do this sort. So region first, column G. That seems to do the job. So add level. And then we want to go gender, which is column F. There we go, sort by region, then by gender. Okay. All right, so quick sense check of the data. Yeah, this looks reasonable. So East F the sort seems to have worked. So we want to go down to north. Here we are, and then females in the north. So it's this data here. Just going to select the data, looking across the database. Okay, so this is all the data for female. Now I can see just outside of your screenshots, we've got a sum of 12 there. I'm going to put that into a formula, just so it's absolutely clear, down the database again. So we're looking for north in column G. North is just here. Then holding down the shift key using the cursors to select a range. Okay, the females end there. And then this gives us a value of 12. So there we've worked it out manually. So for the north region, females, summing up the number of children, we've got a value of 12. We can then cross-reference that against our formula, complete the validation exercise. We've got a value of 12 here too. So validation seems to be accurate in this case, building my confidence in the formula. There we go. So this gives us the data for the north region, but we want the data for the other regions too, south, east and west. So how can we improve this formula so I can just drag it down and get it working quickly? Well, let's delete this north text here and let's just put a reference in there. At this point, I'm going to make it a partial absolute reference, going to fix the column because I think I'm going to copy this formula across later. Then we've got 12 here. Take this down, 2249 and west 24. Just as another validation check, let's check the west figures. So again, let's have a sum formula and going down the database to west. There's west and then female starts there. then the number of children, holding down the shift key. There we go, female ends there, hit enter, complete the formula. So we've got a value of 24 with the manual workings, and that's, yeah, it's the same as the value we've got using the SUMIF formula. So I'm satisfied with the accuracy there, having done a validation check. So that's the SUMIFS formula. We've used two criteria there, really sophisticated, powerful piece of analysis. So the operation here is we're summing up. So we're adding up the number of children there. What if we wanted to find the average? What if we wanted to find the average number of children? So yeah, we could start the formula again, equals AVERAGEIF, AVERAGEIFS, plural. But just by doing this, we can see from the prompts that the structure of the formula is going to be very similar to the SUMIF formula. We've got the average range to begin with. With the SUMIF formula, we talked about the sum range. We've got the average range here. So that's the range of cells we're going to perform the operation on. So where is the data that you want to get the average for? In this case, we're talking about total number of children. In fact, at this point, I'll get the key question in. The average number of children for people over 30 in each region. So I'll pop this question here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, anyway, going back to the formula, I'm going to copy paste north, south, east, west across here. Going back to the AVERAGEIF formula, yeah, we can notice straight away AVERAGEIFS formula. We can see that the setup of the formula is similar to the SUMIFS formula. So what could we do now? Rather than building the formula from scratch, could we take a bit of a shortcut, reuse something that we know works already in order to get this formula working quickly? So what about taking the SUMIF formula? Should work okay. I'm just going to copy this across. Now, we can see there does appear to be a problem there. Okay, yeah, I'm glad I flagged this up because we're missing some absolute references here. So I'm going to pop the absolute references in and then take that down. Okay, so we've got absolute references in all the formulae. So now copy this across and I've got the same result. So the two formula in this same formula in two different places giving me the same result. That indicates that the references, we've got absolute references there, partial absolute references. The references are likely to be accurate. So we want to get the average this time. So what does the question say? The average number of children for people aged over 30 in the region. So let's go AVERAGEIFS this time. Okay, so now we can see the number. Well, it looks much more like an average, 1.7. That could possibly be a number for the number of children in a family. So it seems to be sensible. But this formula is not there. Is not quite there yet. So what's similar and what's different between these two questions? Let's compare these questions. Well, both questions refer to the region. So in the SUMIF formula, we've referred to column G here, column G in the database. So this component of the formula we can retain because question 8 also refers to the region, the data in column G of the database. Just here, region. So let's retain that part of the formula. But this first part, the first criteria here, this we want to change. In question 7, we're talking about gender, females in particular. In question 8, we're talking about age. So we want to take this formula, find the age column, which is column E. Age column is column E. Go back to the analysis sheets, and then I'm just going to change column F to column E. Now if I hit return, I'm likely to get an error. Why is that? Well, you can see, just click into the formula, we can see that I've set the criteria as F, but F does not appear in the criteria range, which is column E. Column E, we've got ages, we've got numbers in there. There's no F's in there, so Excel can't find any cells that conform to that criteria. It's returning an error there. So let's try changing this to the question is asking for over 30. So we're going to type in this in speech marks, because we're using a query here, in speech marks over 30, more than 30. Then let's see what we get here. Okay, now we've got 2.11. That seems to be accurate for what we're talking about. We're talking about the number of children in a family. So just sense checking, that seems to be sensible, but we want to go further. We want to check this. So let's sort the data. And this time we want the data sorted in terms of region first, and then in terms of age. So region is in column G, age is in column E. There we go, values smallest to largest, this looks good. Okay, now which region are we talking about? We're talking about the north here. So let's go down the database to, up the database rather, to north. There we go. Then we're talking about people aged over 30. So again, let's type in a simple formula, then find the data in the database that we're talking about here and do a validation that way. So it's people in the north aged over 30. So starting on row 117 here. And then we go down until we get to the end of the north data, because it's people aged over 30. So it's going to include everybody in the north data aged over 30. Okay, then we've got an average of 2.1 there. Going back to the analysis, we've also got an average of 2.1 there. So I've done a quick validation check. I'm happy with the accuracy there. So again, we want to find this for all of the regions. So I'm just going to check the references, because I did make a mistake with the references before. Are these all absolute references? The row references, are they accurate? Yes, I'm happy with all of those. So I can just drag this down, and then I'm getting the corresponding data for the other regions too. Okay. So we've extended our learning there, talking about working with multiple criteria. We've got the SUMIFS formula, AVERAGEIFS formula. So we've specified 2 criteria here. You could specify any number of criteria, 3 or 4 criteria. Such a powerful function, going to allow you to get your analysis done really quickly. In the final video in this series, we're going to take it a step further. So, you know, we might have 2 criteria. If we had 3 or 4 criteria, then putting together that formula, the SUMIF formula, is going to become more and more difficult, because for each criteria, we need to specify 2 components, the criteria range and the criteria. Very quickly, it's going to get very complicated putting those long formulae together. So is there an alternative? There is an alternative, which is the DSUM formula. A different setup, works in a completely different way, but allows us to put lots of criteria in there to produce really precise analysis, and we can set it up fairly quickly. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about DSUM and DAVERAGE. See you in the next video.